What does it mean to be a gentleman in the 21st century? What are the virtues that define a man of excellence? In an era where manners and masculinity seem like a distant mystery, a brotherhood of like-minded men arises to rediscover the lost art. Welcome to the Gentleman's Brotherhood. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Gentleman's Brotherhood. I'm your host, Juan Sepulveda, and today I have the pleasure of having as a co-host my good friend Alberto Mella. Alberto, how are you tonight, man?
Awesome, man. Really excited to share this fantastic night. This is a beautiful night.
It is a really nice night. We're in Kissimmee, Florida. I'm at Alberto's house, and we're going to have a conversation about like the origins of why is being a gentleman important to us. And for those of you who don't know Alberto is a public speaker and a coach, and he is one of the regular contributors to the Gentleman's Brotherhood articles. He has a very awesome series that has gained some traction on the website. And what is the title of the series itself?
The Warrior in the Garden.
The Warrior in the Garden. And we are at the fourth installment of that already. And it is a very interesting one. If you haven't read through it yet, I encourage you to check it out. But today, Alberto and I are just going to sit down, have a drink, have a friendly conversation, and kind of reminisce about the origins of our interest in self-development, in our growth as men, as gentlemen. And hopefully, as a listener, you can find something of value in our conversation. And you can get to know us a little bit better and also know our intentions and our vision for the Gentleman's Brotherhood. Alberto is not only a contributor, but he's one of my trusted advisors in the Gentleman's Brotherhood development. And you know, now talking to you, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to.
Thank you. It's worth it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. So let's start by, I want to hear a little bit more about where you grew up and the role of men in that particular culture.
Right. I was born in Bronx, New York, but that's all I did in New York was be born. And I moved to the Dominican Republic when I was 11 months old. And my family on my father's side is very big. We're talking about 13 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And on my mother's side is 5 altogether, between one gentleman and 4 ladies. My family growing up, we met every Sunday. All the family, all of it. So I grew up in the presence of all these aunts and uncles together in the same place, and then my cousins. So I grew up in this environment where I had a lot of many grown-ups to look after, to follow their examples or not. But for the most part, being a very male-dominated society, because this is mostly Hispanic.
It's a very common thing.
It's a very common thing for us. The men were always in their own place, in their own gathering, and the ladies went to their own gathering. So obviously, I wanted to know what the men were talking about.
Were you given an opportunity to be a part of the conversation?
Yes. Not to talk, but to listen.
To listen.
I was invited to listen. So I was welcome as long as I did not speak.
Right.
However, I understood from a very young age that was a treasure trove of information. Like, why would I mess this up if, as long as I just kept quiet, I could just absorb everything, politics, finances, business, you name it. Everything that was floating, I was there, getting it and absorbing it all. Now, mind you, we're talking about the 80s here, right? So we're talking about people that were very entrepreneurial, very well connected. So I gathered a lot from that. And then when I got bored, I will go to the lady side. Same thing, as long as you don't speak, you're fine.
You're welcome to listen.
Yes.
To a degree.
And I also learned a lot. I learned a lot from medicinal remedies, from secrets in the kitchen, and secrets with cleaning and clothing. And whenever the conversation steered to the husbands, and the same happened with the man. Well, no, I take that back. Whenever the conversation steered to the husbands, then I was kicked out. But when I was with the man, they didn't mind.
They were freer.
Yeah, they said, well, and they would look at me and say, yeah, your aunt is crazy. She does this and whatnot. But I knew that when I was with the ladies, when they veered into that part of the conversation, they go like, okay, go play.
You're the oldest brother?
I am, of three.
Of three. I know you have a brother. You have another
brother. Yeah.
Another brother. Okay. And was there a male role model at home? Did you grow up with your dad?
Yes, I grew up with my father. But I'm gonna try to let me see how I say this. My role model was not only my father.
Yeah.
All my uncles were my role models. You see, my dad, he never made it past the 8th grade. It was a different time. It was where you were pulled out of school because you needed to be providing for the family. You needed to be providing for it. So my dad started working very early. My father always had a job where I did not see him. He was working in the casinos. He was a pit boss. So I will not see him that much. I know he was there. I know he was a lovable guy. But as far as getting advice, I didn't get from him. But on those weekends where the whole family was there, my uncles would advise me. My dad will advise me, right? So I was getting advice from all these gentlemen at the same time.
I like
It's a, do this, and then when there were conflicting advices, they were like, no, and then a discussion will ensue, and a little argument would ensue, and it will fascinate me. I go like, okay, so let's see which way we go. And usually the tiebreaker of those arguments will be one of the ladies just walking by, just bringing somebody a glass of water, a glass of whiskey, or something.
That's interesting.
Lady will come in and notice the argument and then go like, no, you're telling him wrong. Say, come on, Albertito, let me tell you how you do this. Nice. This is how you do it.
Nice.
So for the most part, that's how my looking at male role models, that's how it happened for me.
I see parallels with that in my life. My father also, he worked a lot. He spent a lot of time out of the house, and many times when he was home, he was watching the news, or he was counting money on the table, or it sounds like Scrooge McDuck or something like that. But my father had a pizza restaurant, so there was a lot of cash transactions. We spent a lot of time sitting at a table counting money and working on bills and that sort of stuff, which I think was formative for me. It was important for me to have that involvement in seeing the daily interaction with money and getting to understand money from a very up close and personal side. But he did take the time to talk with us at times and give us lessons. Most of the things I learned from him were through his example. And just like you, our family wasn't very large. My dad has 2 brothers, and I got a chance to spend time with them too and get to learn from them. They were all very different. They all behaved differently, but they did have some things in common. Some things were common to my family. Other things were common to the society in which we lived. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, another Latin American, Caribbean culture where the roles of the male and the female are very distinct. So I did get to grow up in that culture, seeing the separation of responsibilities, in retrospect now, a seeming unbalance of power, or a perceived unbalance of power, and which today it is important for me to be more objective and to be open-minded so that I can stay up with the times. You know, part of the Gentleman's Brotherhood is that effort to help young men continue to grow as men and not drag along ideas that could be detrimental to relationships today. Is respecting the past, adopting the things that were noble, that were good, that were fair, that were admirable of those times, but in a sense, adapting those to today's society. You know, a good example would be my father. Even though he knew how to cook because he was pretty much like an Italian cook, he had a large assortment of menu items that he could cook. He rarely ever cooked at home. That was my mom's responsibility. Doing the dishes, he didn't do much of that. That was my mother's responsibility. So I grew up where there was that distinction, but I was involved in doing a lot of those things. I was involved in cooking with my mother. I was involved in doing the dishes with her. Growing up, now that I work from home and I do take a lot of those responsibilities where I cook almost daily, where I worked on the dishes almost daily, it is important that I had that open-mindedness to recognize that we live in a different time where me cooking or doing the dishes doesn't make me less of a man. I'm sure you heard comments, from growing up. Oh, déjale eso a las mujeres. That's for women to do. Why are you wasting your time on that?
Yeah, I did. However, and you're right. You come from a society that has very distinct gender roles. There's something that I noticed very early too, and it was that while the women were relegated to their, and this is again in my family nucleus, right? Mm-hmm. In my little petri dish of a family where I was. You know how you always wish you could be a fly in the wall? Well, I was a fly in the wall. As long as you don't speak, you're fine.
You won't get swatted.
Yeah, they don't get swatted. That's a good one. I noticed that the power structure was skewed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the men were boisterous. The men were the business guy. The men were the ones making the money. But the women, were the quiet power. Right? To this day, all of those couples, uncles and aunts, they're still together. And some have passed away or not, but till this day. And what I realized was that what they did that worked perfectly is that they were a team. And they understood without speaking. You know, you could see the looks going back and forth. You can see when the woman did not like the man, like, you're drinking too much or you're saying too much. That look will go across the room, across a house, across a yard, very effectively, and they will go like, that's it.
Yeah.
So I knew where the power was. And I was like, okay, that's the kind of woman that my mother is. My mother is an alpha female. My mother is an alpha female. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, if I ever get the opportunity to, this is me talking as a kid, if I ever get the opportunity to marry a woman, I want a woman as powerful as this lady's, as active as this lady's, somebody that can steer this engine, right? Because I knew, and I know, and thankfully I have found that woman. I know that I'm very active. I have ideas. I go in 1,000 directions with things that I want to do and things that I want to accomplish. And I need somebody to go like, okay, slap you twice and go like, focus, pick one, right? Because I saw this growing up. I saw all these men talking about ideas of things that we're going to do and whatnot. And the ladies coming like, come on now, you still need to paint the fence, right? It was their little jab at saying, you haven't finished this thing you started and you want to keep on, you want to now do something new.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting you say that, because I think of the percentage of men who grow up and are not as fortunate as us to live in a household that has a mom and a dad, and to get to carefully examine the dynamic and at least have some sort of baseline upon which to craft their vision of a marriage. If I'm not mistaken, 2015 there was a study, and 40% of boys were growing up in a household that didn't have a male role model.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of boys out there who are growing up that, if you think about it, where are they going to find this role model? Ideally, there are some male characters in the family. And this doesn't mean that the female can't convey the lessons that a man can, but there is a very important component of a man seeing a man upon whom they want to craft their own persona. See, 'cause children are like a blank canvas, and they do come with some pre-programmed operating system, but there is some software that is installed in them, and a good balance is when a young man is able to grow and have some sort of mentorship, have some sort of guidance from other men who have gone that way before them. Yeah. And ideally, as we continue to explore what the Gentleman's Brotherhood can become, I want to make sure that we are also providing a little bit of insight for those young men who are growing up, didn't grow up with the father figure in the household, but they can hear from us and they can see in our example what men do in the 21st century.
I've been very lucky. You're absolutely right. But now let me throw you a curveball. When you know, a man needs a different kind of mentor at every stage of his life. If your father happens to be with you throughout your adolescence and then adulthood, then great.
The formative years.
In your formative years. But if not, something needs to fit that role.
Yes.
For example, when I was 15, again, the 80s, bad economy, things just blew up. My dad had to go to Puerto Rico to get to find work. The situation in my house in the Dominican Republic was very bad. My mother couldn't hold all 3 boys by herself. So it was agreed that I will move with my father. When I moved with my father to Puerto Rico, my father was an alcoholic. So my father will work and then come back drunk, and that was it until the next day. So it is safe to say that during that period of time, my 15, 16, 17, 18, I didn't have a father figure per se. I was babysitting my dad. I was trying to get my dad out of what was very destructive for him. However, I did meet a gentleman who used to be a retired police officer, who used to be a bodybuilder, who took me under his wing and started training me, lifting weights and in fitness and all that. So now I had a male figure, a very virile, masculine male figure. Like this guy was the size of a refrigerator, right? And he was in his 70s. Now, I'm lifting weights, and he's just throwing wisdom at me. Like, do this, do that, don't go here, don't go there, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that, at that particular time. Fast forward to when I come back from the military. I'm an adult. I still cannot speak to my father in terms, because at that point, I already been to college, I already been uber educated, I have a master's degree. My dad has an 8th grade. So it was like we're trying to have a conversation, and the conversation is not flowing, and I don't know if it's because it's intellectually different, our experiences are different. He stayed in the Dominican Republic and then Puerto Rico for all his life. At that point, I have traveled the world, been around everywhere, and I wanted to talk about everything, and he just couldn't follow. And my dad is not a conversation person. I meet a retired colonel, also in his 70s, and now this guy is giving me wisdom, because I have a young wife and a young family, and I am pulling my hair because now I'm living with the person that I thought I wanted to be for the rest of my life. But when 2 people start living together, things are not what you thought they were going to be. Yeah. So it's in that period of time that I meet this gentleman that guides me through and shows me the way of, now you're a family man. This is what you do.
I like that.
And I was lucky. I was lucky that in every stage of my life, when I needed a male figure appeared to give me that. Now, mind you, I do not want to take away from my dad what he has done for me.
Of course.
Because my dad has been the silent power there, right? My dad has always been there. And right now he's still alive, and he comes and comes here every day, walks the dog, picks the girls from school, and we sit right here and drink beers. Yeah. And then we can talk about the now. So now my father is my now. There were periods, there were times in my life where I didn't have him, but I have him now.
Yeah.
And now we can talk about whatever, because now I'm an adult. I have my family. I have my goals. I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
He is retired. He's done it. So now we can compare notes.
That's good. And that happens with a lot of father-son relationships where there are some ebbs and flows to the relationship. There, and a great example is you have young children and they think you are the greatest thing in the world. You are a superhero to them. They can't believe how strong you are, how smart you are. But then they go through a period where they're old enough and have some interactions with you, and then they start doubting your strength, doubting your leadership, doubting your intellect, and now you become just like, they can't deal with you. And then, but eventually they get enough life under their roster that they can look back and see, oh my God, he was right about this. And he was a good model for this other thing. So it's good to hear that you guys are in a good position now. You're in a good place now in a relationship. But it's almost inevitable that paternal filial relationship goes to that rocky stage where you speak past each other, you don't see eye to eye, and you have this difficulty of connection. Now, during that difficulty, there was a void because your need for a male role model didn't dissipate. That need was still there.
Yeah.
And there was always someone available to fill that gap.
Luckily.
That's a very fortunate position to be in, because there's a lot of people that they just don't. Especially now where human interaction has gone through this shift where people spend less time with other people face to face, and they are relegated to the obscurity of their bedroom or their office.
And they fill that void with a celebrity.
Exactly. That's exactly where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
More than ever, it is important for us to recognize the evolution of communication, the evolution of access and human interaction, and offer for those men who need it those connections that can fill the void that they're going through. And you don't need to not have a father to need an older adult, an older male role model. Your father can still be there, but there's a multitude of curiosities, of things that you are yet to learn, and it's almost impossible to expect your father to be the sole provider of the wisdom that can supply that.
Yep.
So I'm glad to hear that you had, at every step, you had someone to look up to.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If there's something, but if there's something, if there's something that the other men could not fill up that my dad did, was empathy. I learned empathy when my dad was at his darkest, and I learned it from him. Because throughout his whole ordeal, his concern was always me. His concern was always my brothers. His concern was, mind you, he had a disease. He had a sickness. Being alcoholic is not something easy to deal with. But he was living at the very edge of his economy, because he was sending every penny minus his rent and a few dollars for food for my mother and my brothers. And every time I saw him down, and he cried a lot, and he was always thinking about somebody else, not him, about somebody else. But do we have food for tomorrow? Do we have? Yes, we're fine. I have to send this money to your mother. Don't worry, I'll send it. You just sleep it off or whatnot. And that I did get for him. Which makes me think that sometimes it's not the getting a role model, it's getting the right role model. Because my brother, he was always looking. I mean, it's three of us. We share the same father, right? So it goes to reason that also my brothers are looking for other male models. Mm-hmm. My youngest one, my youngest brother always looked at me as his role model. My youngest one. But the middle one, he was always in competition with me. So he didn't want me as a role model at all. Mm. He didn't want to touch the same things I touched. He wanted to be as far away from me as he could possibly be. Hmm. So his models were not the good kind. And he had issues with the law. He had issues with drugs. He had issues with... And there was nothing I could do about it. Me or my father or anybody. He had already decided that these people that have the big cars and the big guns and the girls with the short skirts, yeah. This are the guys that know what I want.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because it shines a light on the disposition of an individual to receive what others are providing. And even though you were in the same household, at least for a period of time, you were in the same household, same parents, same conditions, your individual attitudes dictated how much of a fertile ground you were for receiving the guidance from these other people. Mm. Now, going back to the thought of, like, why is it even important to be a gentleman in today's society? I wanted to kind of like touch a little bit, because this is something that we're going to discuss in depth later on. We wanted to speak a little bit about both our upbringings and kind of like give people an overview of what positions us as one of us, one of you. You know, we're two men who are growing a family, who came from somewhat similar backgrounds, but very unique in their own respective. And how we look today at the importance of becoming a better man with every day that goes by, to be able to provide for the family, to establish good relationships, and that sort of thing. But like, why is it even important to be a gentleman in today's society? And although we're going to touch up on that in detail on another conversation, how do you feel that being a gentleman today ties to your upbringing in your family?
So one of the gentlemen in that group of gentlemen, you know, I spoke to you about my uncles, but it was also my grandfather on my father's side. I was raised. The youngest memory I have is probably 3-4 years old, on his lap, listening to ballads, boleros, right? And he played guitar and he sang, and we sang together. And those songs are usually about a man's love for a woman. Right? It's a man's love for a woman. And here's me, 4 years old, being romantic and singing like my grandfather teaches me, right? And I like it. And so when my mother's friends will come over, I will sing to them. And they will say, "Qué caballero."
Uh-huh.
What a little gentleman. And I like that. I like that very much. I like the attention. I liked how, not only how that made me feel, but the sincere smile that I got from them.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a kid, you pick up pretty quick who's just going like, "Hey, you're a nice kid," or who genuinely likes you.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I grow up always looking for that in other people. How can I get that reaction from other people? And I will open the door for ladies. Now this is 7, 8 years old. I'm opening the door for ladies, and the lady goes, "Thank you, what a gentleman."
Mm-hmm.
I always had a handkerchief, and when somebody was, with tears or sneezing, I will pull my handkerchief. Oh, okay, what a gentleman! I like that.
Yeah.
I was doing something for somebody else, and all I wanted as a payment was the reaction, their happy reaction that somebody had done something for them.
Yeah.
Without expecting payment.
Mm-hmm. It took a little effort on your part, and it made a difference in someone else's life.
My mother,
at least at that moment.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely. My mother always told me this. She said, "Haz bien sin mirar a quién." Right? You do good without minding to whom. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that motto in mind, I always went for it, and that is my creed as a gentleman. I will do good. I will do good because it costs me nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the value is immense, not only for the person to whom I'm doing good, opening the door, giving you a handkerchief, just saying nice, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
How's your day? Just being nice. It costs me nothing.
Yeah.
It's no effort. It's effortless.
Yeah.
But what I get in return, or what that person gets in return, right, is huge. But what do I get? What's in it for me?
Yeah.
The reaction. That when their faces light up. It's
Yeah, that's priceless.
it's a priceless feeling.
And it's something that is simple to implement. I'll give an example that came to mind. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It doesn't cost anything for you to, whenever you're thinking about someone who means something to you, to let them know that you're thinking about them. And it could be by just saying, sending a text message saying, "Hey, I thought about you today. I hope that you're doing well. Have a good Friday," or whatever. That little text message has a chance of arriving at a moment, obviously, that's unexpected. This person will not be expecting to receive a message from you. And it's not asking for a favor. It's not giving bad news. It's just saying, you matter in my life, and I just want you to know. I try to do this with the people that are important to me whenever I can. Send a message, an email, give them a quick phone call. It's like, "Hey, I had a dream about you last night. I know we haven't talked in a while. I don't have a lot of time to talk, but I just wanted to let you know that, I was happy to see you in my dream. And I hope that we can, reconnect and maybe have a drink together, or talk or something like that. Those are gestures that are very simple to extend to someone else. They have an impact on people. Considering how much negativity is around us, when with the 24-hour news cycle, with the political back and forth, the divisions of opinion, we are at a position today where we can make a difference in that one individual in a minute without spending any money. And I think it's a great thing to do if you can do it. And I'm not saying fake things, because it doesn't come natural. I'm sure that someone's going to listen to this and they might think, I would never do that. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable just sending a message to someone and tell them, I was thinking about you. But there are other ways in which you can show that you care, that you show that these people are important to you. And it could be by remembering their birthday, by remembering their anniversary. And you don't have to send a gift. It can be as simple as just sending a message that says, happy birthday. Don't send it at midnight, the night before, though. Because
it doesn't cost anything to be gentle. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. And I think that is where the modern gentleman comes in. When you think about being gentle, there's a reason why it's being called a gentleman. Right? A man is strong, right? We're physically strong. We're physically powerful. That's easy. To exhibit your power, whatever that might be, that's easy. You know, if you're stronger than somebody else, it's easy to project that power. If you're more verbose than somebody else, it's easy to outspeak them. If you are wealthier than somebody else, it is easier to exhibit, to show that wealth.
To outspend them.
To outspend them. What it's difficult is to be gentle with that power.
Yeah.
How do you use your power so that you're not a bully? Right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the modern gentleman comes in. Is how do you use those talents, those things that make you powerful? How do you use them for service?
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you move society forward with that superpower that you have, without being boisterous, without smacking somebody upside the head with it, without being in your face about it? How do you do it?
Yeah, it's putting to work the ability to have control over your emotions. Now, there are a lot of physiological and mental variables that need to be tweaked in order for a man to be an effective steward of his emotions and his power. And in future conversations and future things that we're going to do in the Gentleman's Brotherhood, I want to shine a light on those things.
Yeah.
Because the element of where we grew up is important to our vision of what a gentleman is, what the roles of male and female in society traditionally have been, and how they're evolving. That comes from our upbringing. But there are many other variables that I want us to discuss in length, because if we neglect them, it is at our own peril. Because we work against our own progress as individuals, as members of society. In like I said, physiological and mental barriers come to mind. So I look forward to future conversations where we tackle some of these things, because you cannot become a gentleman or become the ultimate gentleman by just reading one book, by just speaking with one person, by going to one place. This is a lifelong journey, and it's one that is traveled by small increments. And I love the idea that I have room for improvement, that I can be a better person, I can be a better dad, I can be a better friend, I can be a better husband, I can be a better entrepreneur. And I don't want to be overwhelmed with the amount of room that I have for growth. I am excited about the discoveries that will continue to happen in my life. And I hope that the people that listen to also have that excitement and realize it's not just one conversation, one book, one interaction. Like, the Gentleman's Brotherhood it's a brotherhood. It's that relationship between men who place value in having that gentle control over their power, over their emotions, and over their actions. So, Alberto, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I can't wait for our next conversation.
Yeah, thank you for coming. This is fantastic.
I really enjoyed it very much. And again, I want to remind all the listeners that if you haven't read the articles of The Warrior in the Garden, head over to thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com, where you can read all 4 installments. And I know there's a 5th one coming
soon.
There's a 5th one coming soon. I'm looking forward to it. And if you enjoyed this conversation, tune in again for the next episode and share this with another gentleman. I kindly ask you, if you know of someone who could benefit from the listening to these conversations or engaging in communication related to growing as a man and a gentleman, invite them to come to the Gentleman's Brotherhood and join our brotherhood. So until next time, I wish you courage and courtesy. Thanks for listening.